Hi, I'm Carl Stoddard with Doctor CFO. Today in this podcast, we're going to talk about pricing and profits and some ideas on how to move you into a higher pricing model and some simple things that you can do to increase your profit today.
OrthoMarketing.com, 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.
Well, hello, everybody out there in podcast land. It's Dean Steinman. And guess what? We are back with another podcast for, guess who? You! And it's now almost March already, if you could believe that, 2025. Spring's right around the corner. Can't wait. It's been a long, cold, lonely winter, as the Beatles said. So now it's time to hopefully spring will come soon. And with that comes eternal optimism, baseball, nice weather, so all good. And we're also now going to talk a little bit about bottom line and pricing for your practice. And I've got a special guest with me today who is going to go over different ways to position your practice and how to price it there. And I've got Carl Stoddard with me. Carl is the founder of Doctor CFO. And Carl, welcome, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on your show, Dean. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So let's back up. Tell us a little bit about Carl, who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I founded Dr. CFO back in 2009, 10. Basically, what we are is a fractional CFO service for doctors and dentists. Maybe a little bit before that, I was doing a similar type of business for actually a big, Fortune 500 semiconductor company. And I just thought that what we do there would have value in the doctor dentist world as well. And so I started doing it on the side, and then it kind of turned into a full-time thing. So I have an accounting degree from Idaho State University. I have an MBA from Arizona State University. I also have a lot of music education in my background. So you'll see a lot of the stuff I do maybe is a little bit different or creative. I would say that's because of the musician in me.
Nice.
So I'd love to do that full time, but it's hard to make money doing that. So that's one of
Ditto. Unfortunately, I can't carry a tune, but I would love to. I've been playing music my whole life, and I'm tone deaf. I can't sing for anything, but I would love to. Nothing better than a couple of bourbons and getting up and karaokeing. So love that. So let's kind of jump into it. So
Okay.
for a practice, but dental practice, what is basically the right way for them to figure out how to price themselves for their services?
Well, it kind of depends. So like so dental is interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one is if they accept insurance, then the price is pretty much already set for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a matter of a price on an individual line item. So there's not a lot of negotiation in that, especially if you're like a pediatric dental place, then you're getting the rate that they decide to give you in the state. That's the rate you're getting. And then there's a lot of auditing as well. So they kind of do what's called a chart audit. And so you're kind of limited in what you can do. Okay.
Right.
And so now if we go into more general dentistry, then they have a little bit more flexibility. So I would say one thing that's a little bit different between a dentist and say a doctor is a dentist sells more than a doctor right now. I think that's going to change. But at the moment, a dentist is selling because the person that they're working with may have an insurance package that says, okay, we'll give you $2,000 a year per person. But most dental stuff costs a lot more than $2,000 a year, right? You get a couple crowns, maybe a couple implants, like you're going to be way more than that. And as you get older, your teeth start falling apart. And so you need more and more of that kind of stuff done, right? So, so I think that the way that the dentist really prices themselves is by offering more and more services.
Okay.
Not necessarily the price on a specific thing, but they offer more and more services to that particular patient. Now you see within this world, you see some dentists go into a pure cosmetic thing. So I've got a client right now. He does huge cases. He might do, the in the different quadrants, and it might cost $40,000 or $50,000 to get your whole mouth redone.
Right.
Not everybody can afford that. Not everybody wants to afford that. I would say in his business, though, there's a lot of risk on the cost side as well. So, but the cosmetic dentistry, if you want to be a pure pricing person, it would have to be in the cosmetic dentistry world. But then dentistry kind of reminds me a lot of like the spa environment, because people get fillers like Botox and that kind of stuff. There is kind of a market price. So if somebody wants to get Botox, they're going to go and look at what everybody else charges for Botox. So it's hard to charge more for that particular Botox item. So the way you differentiate, you might charge a little bit more. Like if you're a dermatologist doing Botox, you could charge a little bit more, right? So if you're a dentist that has upgraded their clientele and can move into cash pricing, that would be a way to do it. So I have a thought for you. Just a second. I'm going to pull something up here. I think this will kind of answer your question more generally. I don't know if I'm allowed to share my screen, but
I don't know if that's available on here. If not, we could always put a link up afterwards.
Okay. So basically, we have this little model, okay? And so I kind of use my hands to visualize. So when a dentist starts out, they might they'll just take, like you're a brand new dentist, you're just going to take whoever, right? You're just going to take whoever. So you're going to take the insurance patients, you're going to take the government insurance patients. They don't pay very well. Well, hopefully over time, you need to start filling your schedule with first you get your schedule full. And then the second phase would be, okay, now we're going to replace our bad payers with our better payers. So we're going to replace our government insurers, Medicare, Medicaid, with, the Blue Crosses, the better insurers in there. Okay. So within insurers, they're not all created equal. So then you want to start replacing the poorer insurers with the better insurers. And then eventually you want to move in from to self-pay. Okay. Once you move into the self-pay world, now you have a lot more control over your pricing. Okay. And you have the ability to price differently.
But what do you do though? Do you say, for example, let's just use basic, aligners, Invisalign, what have you, and a orthodontist or a dentist is now offering aligners. What do they just throw like a dart against the wall to find like how much to charge? Do they try to, do they do market research? Like what would you suggest somebody to do in order to
suggest that they do market research in their area? So they need to have somebody maybe be a silent shopper. They need to go find out, maybe their top 4 or 5 competitors in their area. Find out. Now, these guys might even share their price if you're friends with them, right? They might say, yeah, I'm offering this service. And if you're far enough away from that person, say an hour or two, if you're in a group, they're going to share their prices. So if you're part of a group that talks, they'll share their prices. And so you should be able to get those prices by talking to people in the group to kind of get what the high rate and maybe the middle rate and the low rate is. And then, but it's more than just the price, right? It's like, well, what do you like to get that price? How do you differentiate yourself to deserve more of the price? Right. So in this little thing that we have, when you're kind of the high end price, you need to, everybody needs to look the part. So like if I go into like a Walmart, let's say, and I'm going to buy a bicycle, I don't expect anybody in Walmart to be able to tell me about that bicycle. Right. But if I go into the bike store, I expect everybody in that bike store to at least be a little bit smart about the bicycles.
Good analogy.
All the bicycles, right? So when I go into a dental practice or an ortho practice, and it's a high-end one, right? I'm going to expect everybody to look the part, and I'm going to expect everybody to be knowledgeable about all of the major services that they offer. And the reason why they need to be knowledgeable is because they're actually part of the sales process. They're actually helping either set up the sale or close the sale, right? They're either going to set it up or they're going to close it. But you go in a lot of offices, and this is the problem with turnover. You get somebody that's new, they're not going to help set up or close the sale. Right. Okay. So it's really salesmanship is how you increase your price. I think, and how you set the mood of going after higher end clients. Okay. So when you start going after higher end clients, it's like, the marketing to higher end clients is so different than lower end clients because it's more directed. Because where do they shop? Where do they eat? Who are their friends? What do they do? Right? So you need to get into that venue with those people. And so if you're saying, okay, I'm a dentist, I can see 2,000 patients and I want to move into this high end. Okay, then you need to find out where those 2,000 patients are, and you need to slowly start building your clientele for those 2,000 patients. And they have friends, you can do referrals. But I think, before you start changing your prices, you kind of got to like set your clientele up. And then the other thing too is you got to do like a lot of, you got to like, I'm going to go back to a music analogy. You can't just be like an ordinary pianist. You got to be a fantastic pianist, right? So if you're a dentist, it's not just an ordinary dentist. You got to be the best dentist,
Right?
Exactly. The Michelangelo, if you will, of dentistry. And so if you're that good and people see the difference, they will pay you whatever price they want, because you're moving into a higher and higher end clientele all the time. So that's kind of the goal. Not every dentist is going to be able to do it. It's just going to be one or two in a market that's going to capture that high end, in my opinion.
This podcast is sponsored by orthomarketing.com. Hey, you an orthodontist or dentist looking to give your practice the competitive edge it deserves? Well, look no further than Ortho Marketing. Ortho Marketing is the dentist and orthodontist choice for digital marketing. At Ortho Marketing, we specialize in helping orthodontists and dentists just like you attract more new patients. Our team of experts knows the ins and outs of the dental and orthodontic industry, and we're here to help your practice shine. We're going to supercharge your online presence. We're going to optimize your website. We're going to harness the power of social media to connect you with the patients that you want. Say goodbye to empty chairs and say hello to a thriving practice. Choose Ortho Marketing today and watch your patient list grow. Visit orthomarketing.com and learn more and take the first steps towards your practice success. Ortho Marketing. It's not just our name, it's what we do. So if you would give somebody advice and they're starting, they're moving into a new area, new practice, and you get to compare apples and apples, not apples and oranges. So say they're offering, Invisalign or aligners. Would you consult with somebody and would you have them come in at the lower end, the middle, or the high end as their pricing? Say they do the research and they see somebody in the market selling it for $4,000, somebody selling it for $7,000. Where would you tell them as a new practice to come in?
Okay, that's a really good question. And so I actually had a guy ask me this question a few years back. Okay. Now he happens to have a couple pediatric Medicaid dental practices. And so he's making money from those. And he says, Carl, I kind of maybe want to do something different, like a cash only practice and only go after the high end. How would I approach that? And I gave him an approach for that. So if you just want to go straight into the high end, it's going to be a slower process. I think it's long-term a better process, but you're going to have some savings to do that, right? Otherwise, if you don't have money and you don't have savings, then you're going to have to kind of chase like everybody else. So then you're going to have to price yourself competitively, right? To be honest with you. And then as you get more experience, then you can start kind of weeding out your bad payers with your better payers and move up. And that might be a 5 or 10 year process, depending on how good a marketer you are and how good of kind of like your personal brand, if you will. To be honest with you, this gets really about the doctor, right? The more professional the doctor looks, the more professional they act, they're going to attract a different client to them and be able to charge more. So there is some charisma to this, in my opinion, right? It's showmanship. And so the person that has the showmanship will be able to get into the market faster and be able to raise their prices. You see this with dermatologists all the time. Dentists, I don't really necessarily see them try to do this. Now I have found actually an exception to this that is unique in the market. So I have found that sometimes if a dentist moves to like an underserved area,
Right.
they can do more with their pricing. If they move to an underserved area, there might not be fancy restaurants, there might not be all that fancy lifestyle stuff, but if they move to an underserved area, they will have demand and they can charge more.
Demand and
But if you
supply.
move
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
but that's not top of mind. I've seen that with the numbers because sometimes
Mhm.
people move to the LAs, think they're going to kill it. There's so much competition there. It's way harder than you think, and your
Mhm.
staff costs more and your rent costs more. And so it's harder. It's not
Right.
easier. It's harder.
Right. All right. So now another scenario. So people are afraid to increase their pricing. So afraid they're going to lose customers and or what
Yeah.
have you. So what advice would you give somebody who is apprehensive about increasing their costs? Because some people are like I don't want to lose customers, and and they're used to spending this. So what advice would you give somebody to embrace the thought that they have no choice but to keep raising a bit?
Yeah. Okay. So we've dealt with this question before. And so I have put together this pricing tool that helps people understand if they're making margin on their whatever it is. Okay.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, whether it's an implant, whether it's the Invisalign, it doesn't matter what it is.
Mhm.
And so in the pricing model, you put in your cost. Okay. So there might be the cost of the implant, the cost of material, and then you put in the labor associated. If there's a machine involved, we deal with the machine, and it will compute a margin. Okay,
Okay.
and so the margin, and there's something I call it a pricing margin. So I'm just going to use a general number. So let's say that your cost before you pay a doctor and all that stuff is 50%. Okay.
Okay.
So that'll be our threshold is 50%. And I might say, well, I know that I need my margin to be at least 60, maybe 70% on each individual item so that I have enough to cover that 50%. Right.
Okay.
So I'm hoping I'm going to go for a benchmark of say 60 or 70%. Well, this pricing model will help you compute all of the trees, if you will, in your forest to see if you're actually making money on those. And so what you'll find is sometimes you might have one that's 40%. Okay. Or
Right.
30%. And you're doing the market price on that. So say it's a Visalign or whatever, and you're only making 30% on it. Okay. Well, that's bad.
Mm.
And so you got a couple options. You can quit doing Invisalign. In this example, you could raise your price, but if you raise your price, you might not get as many.
Right.
Okay. Or there's another option where I can take, say, a Invisalign and something else that I invented or some other Invisalign Plus.
Yeah.
Okay. And I create a package. And so maybe Invisalign's at 30%, and this other thing maybe is at 90%. And
Mhm.
then as they average together, I get Invisalign up to say 50%. And I can
Smart.
live
Yeah.
with that.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you package things together and you're giving the customer or the patient more
Right.
than they originally asked for, and you've packaged it in a very unique, creative way. I don't know exactly what that is,
Right.
but that's how you increase your margin is by packaging things together.
Okay.
You because the market has a price on Invisalign, but they don't have a price on Invisalign Plus. Well, what's Invisalign Plus? I don't know. Well, I do all these extra things,
Right.
and it costs this much.
Yep.
Okay,
Smart.
that's how you do it.
Right. And that's something that we do at Ortho Marketing is we come up with strategies for you to think outside the box and to differentiate yourself and offer a full smile makeover instead of just offering one little piece.
Right.
A great way to be able to come in and have somebody do get the teeth aligned and then get them whitened and then do implants and veneers and be able to
There you
charge
go.
$15,000-$20,000 versus 4,000, 5,000. So there's
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
a
of ways to do it.
complete.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complete concept now. It's
Mhm.
not just Invisalign. It's like we're
Mhm.
going to make you look beautiful again, right,
Right.
with the teeth.
Right.
And I think people underestimate just the value of the teeth. You know when they used to have those makeover shows
Hmm.
and they change people from head to toe.
Right.
But it was I always found it interesting that when they smiled, like you didn't look at anything else. You only looked at the smile.
Right.
And that's the power of the smile. They're not selling healthy teeth. They're selling a smile. They're selling something different, right?
Exactly. It's funny when I
Yeah.
meet with the practice and I go in and I meet with the staff and we train them. I say,
Yeah.
"Well, what business are we in? What business are you in?" And they're like, "We're in dental business. We're in this." You're in the smile business.
That's exactly right.
Your job is to change people's lives. And if you just walk down the street today, if you're in a busy, if you're in a busy town, busy area, and you just look at somebody and just walking towards you, and if they're smiling and feeling better about themselves, you feel better about that person. You didn't even know who they are. You just smile back because you see them happy.
Right.
So the more that somebody smiles, the more better they feel about themselves, the more and the better other people feel about them. So
Right.
so think outside the box, guys. And Carl, one last bit. So if you give somebody who's listening to this one bit of advice or something to do today in order to potentially be more profitable or be able to increase their pricing, what would you suggest they do today internally that can make a little bit of a difference for them?
Well, I think the thing that they could do today is they need to price their. I mean, they need to go through I have a pricing model they can use, but to be honest with you, if you go through the pricing model and you put in your top 5 or 10 sellers,
Mm-hmm.
you will know if you're profitable on each one of those items.
Right.
Okay, so you need to know if you're profitable on your main items.
Right.
Because you might find out, like, in dental, this might not be so obvious, but let's say that you have a hygienist doing the work when you can have an assistant doing the work.
Right.
Your price is going to be the same, but your costs are surely going to be different
Right.
because
Exactly.
you're not paying a hygienist,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you can get somebody to do the work that doesn't cost as much, that's a way to increase your profitability as well. And let me add one more thing, because we're seeing this a lot. And I'm going to kind of change it just a teeny bit. So I guess, to be honest with you, the one thing I'd probably do today is to increase profitability,
Mm-hmm.
is I would start replacing staff with technology as much as possible.
Right.
And think about, what do I really need to do to get this delivered? And how can I use technology to help me deliver the product and service? Because staff is just going to get more and more expensive. There's probably going to be less people to work in the future just because of the birth rates and all that kind of stuff. So like technology, you're going to have to embrace technology and figure out how to leverage it.
Better, right?
We have a small staff. I only have like 3 or 4 people, but we do 2 or 3 times the work that we did a few years ago, just because we're using technology to help us so much. So I would say figure out a way to use technology in your practice before hiring someone. That's a great way to save money.
Awesome. Great tip. So Carl, thanks so much for joining. And I've got 2 more questions for you. One question is, I'm going to give you a gift. I'm going to give you the ability to have dinner with anybody in history.
Okay.
Who you meeting?
All right. That's a good question. Religiously, I might choose the Savior. If I was going to be non-religious, well, that's a tough question. I might choose, well, that's a good question. I mean, my gut tells me I want to talk to Beethoven or Bach or Mozart or something
Right,
like
there you go.
that.
I was wondering if you're going to say music because you
Yeah,
mentioned that before. So
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
good. All right. Well, Beethoven would be kind of tough considering he was deaf there, so you'd have to learn sign language to have from there.
Well, let's go with Bach. I think
Okay.
he was the greatest composer ever. So
Okay.
there
There
you
you
go.
go. Good. All right. Where are you going to go?
Where are we going to go? Probably the best steak place we can find. So
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. Cool. Good. All right, Carl. And if somebody wants to learn more, talk to you, learn about how you can help them, what's the best way for somebody to reach you?
A couple ways. One is obviously our website, www.drcfo.com, or you can email me at Carl with a C at drcfo.com, and we're happy to talk to you.
Great. Hey, Carl, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Guys, you have to know your numbers, plain and simple. If anybody watches Shark Tank, first thing I say is you know your numbers. And everybody's watched Shark Tank. So you have to know what it is and how much it costs and realize to adapt to technology, adapt to change, and, figure out your differentiator. And if you could position yourself the right way in the market, you can charge more. Plain and simple. Why does somebody go into a Porsche dealership and drop 150 grand when they could get a car for 40? Okay, it's because of the way it's perceived and the results. So if you could show people that you give great results and your perception in the market, you could get more. So, Carl, thanks again for joining. Appreciate it. Everybody in podcast land, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for all of your insight and questions. Following us on social media. Look forward to helping you learn more down the road. Everybody out there in podcast land, thank you so much. And don't forget, smile, smile, smile. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Carl.
orthomarketing.com. 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.